For 10 years, Aisha and Rahman believed they understood the meaning of companionship. Their marriage had not been built on dramatic confessions or grand romantic gestures, but on quiet mornings, shared responsibilities, and the gentle rhythm of everyday life. They had married young, with more hope than savings, and had built their small home brick by brick with patience and faith. Rahman worked long hours at a modest accounting firm, while Aisha managed the house and gave online tutoring to help support their growing expenses. They did not have much, but they had mutual respect, soft laughter at night, and a silent promise that no matter how hard life became, they would face it together. Still, as the years passed, something subtle shifted. Their conversations became shorter, their smiles less frequent, and though there was no major conflict between them, there was a quiet distance neither could fully explain. It was Aisha who first noticed the silence settling between them like invisible dust. Rahman would come home tired, eat quietly, and scroll through his phone before falling asleep. She understood his exhaustion, yet she missed the young man who once told her about every small detail of his day. Rahman, on the other hand, believed he was working hard to secure their future, unaware that his silence was slowly building a wall around his wife's heart. Neither of them was wrong, yet both felt lonely in their own ways. They loved each other deeply, but love, they were learning, also required effort, communication, and courage. One evening, while cleaning an old drawer, Aisha found a photo from their early days of marriage. In it, they were sitting with Rahman's college friend Samir and his wife Hira at a roadside tea stall, laughing as if the world held no burdens. Aisha remembered how easily conversations flowed that night. She remembered feeling seen, heard, and alive. A sudden thought came to her heart. Perhaps they needed connection again, not just with each other, but with others who understood life's struggles. That night, she gently suggested to Rahman that they invite Samir and Hira for dinner. Rahman hesitated at first, worried about expenses and preparations, but he agreed when he saw the hopeful light in her eyes. The dinner was simple but warm. Aisha cooked her best dishes, and Rahman even left work early to help set the table. When Samir and Hira arrived, bringing a small dessert and big smiles, something inside the house shifted. Laughter returned to the walls. Stories of past struggles were shared openly. Samir spoke about losing his job 2 years earlier and how Hira had supported him without complaint. Hira shared how there were days when they could barely afford groceries, yet they chose gratitude over blame. Rahman listened quietly, surprised by how similar their experiences were. He had always assumed other couples had it easier, that their own struggles were signs of failure. But hearing Samir's honesty made him realize that hardship was not a sign of weakness. It was part of every journey. As the evening continued, Aisha noticed how Hira looked at Samir when he spoke. There was admiration in her eyes, but also understanding. It was not a perfect love. It was a love that had survived storms. When Hira gently mentioned how she once felt neglected because Samir worked late without explanation, Aisha felt her heart tighten. It was as if someone had spoken her unspoken pain aloud. Rahman also grew thoughtful when Samir admitted that he had once mistaken silence for strength, believing that protecting his wife from worries meant keeping everything inside. Samir confessed that it was only when he began sharing his fears that their bond truly deepened. That night, after their guests left, the house was quiet again, but it was no longer heavy. Rahman sat beside Aisha instead of retreating to his phone. For the first time in months, he asked her how she truly felt. The question was simple, but it carried sincerity. Aisha hesitated, afraid of sounding ungrateful, but she chose honesty over comfort. She told him she missed their conversations, their shared dreams, and the warmth of being included in his thoughts. Rahman listened without interrupting. He did not defend himself. Instead, he admitted that he had been carrying financial worries alone, believing it was his duty as a husband. He feared that if she knew the pressure he felt, she would lose confidence in him. Aisha reached for his hand and reminded him that marriage was not about protecting each other from reality, but facing it together. In that small moment, something healed. They both realized that love is not only about providing or sacrificing silently, It is about allowing the other person to share the weight. Inviting another couple had not changed their circumstances overnight, but it had opened a door to understanding. In the weeks that followed, Rahman made small but meaningful changes. He began sharing details of his day, even the stressful ones. Aisha listened with empathy instead of worry. She also shared her own challenges, including the loneliness she sometimes felt. They began setting aside one evening each week to sit together, without distractions. There were no expensive outings, no grand plans, just honest conversation and tea. Slowly, the distance between them faded. However, life did not suddenly become easy. A few months later, Rahman's company announced staff reductions, and he was among those laid off. The news hit him hard. Old fears resurfaced, and for a moment, he considered hiding the truth from Aisha to avoid disappointing her. But he remembered Samir's words and the promise he had made to be open. That evening, he told her everything. Instead of panic or blame, Aisha responded with calm strength. She reminded him of their resilience and assured him that his worth was not defined by a job title. Those months were challenging. They cut unnecessary expenses, sold a few valuables, and relied more heavily on Aisha's tutoring income. There were days when uncertainty felt overwhelming, yet they faced each one as a team. Sometimes they invited Samir and Hira again, not for lavish dinners, but for simple meals and shared encouragement. The friendship grew deeper, rooted in honesty and mutual support. They learned that surrounding themselves with sincere people strengthened their marriage rather than threatening it. Through hardship, Rahman discovered a new opportunity. With encouragement from Aisha and Samir, he started offering freelance accounting services from home. It was risky, and income was uncertain at first, but he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Aisha supported him tirelessly, helping organize paperwork and promoting his services online. They celebrated small victories, like their first independent client, with the same joy others reserved for grand achievements. One evening, nearly a year after that first dinner invitation, Rahman looked around their modest living room filled with familiar faces. Samir and Hira were there again, sharing laughter over tea. The financial situation was still not perfect, but it was stable. More importantly, the atmosphere between Aisha and Rahman was different. There was warmth in their glances, patience in their words, and gratitude in their hearts. Rahman realized that inviting another couple had not brought comparison or envy into their marriage, as he once feared. Instead, it had brought reflection, humility, and growth. Later that night, as he and Aisha cleaned up together, Rahman thanked her for suggesting that dinner months ago. She smiled and admitted that she had simply wanted to feel connected again. He gently told her that she had saved their marriage from drifting into silent distance. Aisha shook her head and replied that no single person saves a marriage. Both must choose to nurture it daily. Her words settled deeply into his heart. Years later, when younger couples asked them for advice, Aisha would often share their story. She would explain that love is not weakened by seeking guidance or community. Sometimes, seeing another couple's struggles and strengths reminds us that we are not alone. Rahman would add that pride and silence are heavier burdens than financial problems. He would encourage husbands to share their fears and wives to listen without judgment. Together, they would emphasize that marriage thrives not on perfection but on patience, respect, and honest communication. The most beautiful change was not in their bank balance or social circle, but in their understanding of partnership. They learned that love grows stronger when nurtured with vulnerability. They learned that sacrifice does not mean suffering in silence, but choosing unity over ego. They learned that inviting others into their lives with sincerity can bring wisdom rather than comparison. And above all, they learned that hardships are not barriers to happiness, but opportunities to deepen connection. As time passed, their home remained modest, but it felt rich with meaning. The walls that once echoed with silence now carried the sound of shared stories and gentle laughter. Rahman no longer feared appearing weak in front of his wife, and Aisha no longer felt alone in her worries. They had discovered that true strength in marriage lies in standing side by side, not one ahead of the other. Looking back, they often smiled at how a simple dinner invitation had changed everything. It did not solve their problems instantly or erase life's struggles, but it reminded them of the power of humility, community, and honest conversation. Sometimes, transformation does not come from dramatic events, but from small decisions made with pure intentions. In the end, their journey carried a message far greater than their own story. Love is not sustained by comfort alone. It is strengthened by challenges faced together. Silence may seem easier in moments of stress, but openness builds bridges where walls once stood. And when couples choose patience over pride, understanding over assumption, and respect over resentment, they create a bond that can withstand any storm. Inviting another couple into their home had opened their hearts to reflection, but it was their willingness to change that truly transformed their lives. Their story became a gentle reminder that sometimes the smallest invitation can lead to the greatest renewal, and that when love is nurtured with sincerity and faith, everything truly can change.